Hey, so you know that you don't want to miss any episodes of 10 Minute Murder. And you want them the moment they're released. The best way to make that happen is to follow in whatever app you're listening right now. Depending on the app, it might say follow or subscribe or collect. Just hit that button and be the first to get new episodes.
10 Minute Murder contains depictions of actual crimes. What you are about to hear is real and violent in nature. Discretion is advised. This is 10 Minute Murder.
Welcome to the brief and bingeable true crime podcast, 10 Minute Murder. I'm Joe, the host, and thank you for being here. At this moment, there is a severe weather alert in my area, so if you hear a loud clap of thunder, you know what that is. It's definitely not my stomach growling because I just remembered that I put a box of tag-alongs in the fridge earlier, and they're probably at the perfect temperature right now. It's not that at all. I really should... Oh, I didn't think my soda would be that loud opening up. I really should be cleaning my kitchen right now, but when I heard that the weather was coming through and the tornado could possibly destroy that part of my house, I'd be ticked if I washed the dishes for nothing. So here I am, talking about murder. Today's killer had a very specific victim. A serial killer that only targeted women. That's pretty common, but his victims were women between the ages of 20 to 25. That narrows it down quite a bit. But she also had to be 5'6" or under, and weigh less than 120 pounds. We're talking about Texas serial killer, Faryion Wardrip. Faryion Edward Wardrip was born in Salem, Indiana on March 6, 1959. He was the firstborn and has one other brother. There are no known reports of Wardrip experiencing any type of mental or physical abuse during his childhood, which is unusual but not unheard of given the history of serial killers. He dropped out of high school in the 12th grade for some reason. You literally have one more year. Just hang out for a little bit and finish up. I don't understand that. In 1978, at the age of 19, Wardrip joined the National Guard. After 6 years, he was released from National Guard duty under a less than honorable discharge. It was due to smoking marijuana, disorderly conduct, and multiple absences without leave, or going AWOL. During his time in the Guard, he was never deployed to any combat duty. In March 1983, at 24 years old, he married his first wife, 20-year-old Jonna Jackson. They had 2 kids together. The marriage was rocky, but mostly because of Wardrip's drug and alcohol abuse. The same year, he worked as a janitor at the Wichita Falls General Hospital, and within 12 months, he was promoted from janitor to orderly. But due to his addictions, he was unable to maintain that employment and bounced around between different jobs. Jonna's parents stepped in and helped the couple financially, paying their rent and buying groceries. Tired of Faryon's lack of responsibility and addictions, in December 1985, Jonna separated from Wardrip, taking the kids with her. She soon filed for divorce, which was finalized in October 1986. Terry Sims, a part-time EKG specialist at Bethania Hospital in Wichita Falls, Texas, while attending nearby Midwestern State University. Terry and coworker Lisa Boone had finished working their evening shifts on December 20th, 1984. When leaving work, Terry rode with Lisa to a friend's house to exchange Christmas gifts. Terry was planning on spending the night at Lisa's apartment so she could help Terry study for a test that she had the next day. Lisa got an urgent call that she was needed to work another shift at the hospital before they even got home, so she drove Terry to her apartment, gave her the key, and dropped her off at about 12:30 a.m. At 7:30 a.m. that morning, Lisa returned home. She walked in and saw that the living room had been ransacked. She ran out to get the landlord. The landlord entered the apartment and found Terry lying on the bathroom floor in a pool of blood. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed to death. Apparently, while Lisa was away at work, Terry had heard Wardrip outside making noise and went to go see what it was all about. He grabbed her and took her inside the apartment. Wardrip, standing at 6 foot 6 inches and weighing 220 pounds, grabbed Sims at 5'3", 94 pounds, and assaulted her. She didn't have a chance. A month later, Toni Gibbs, 23 years old, 5'1", 94 pounds. She disappeared. Faryion knew Toni because she was a nurse at the same hospital he worked at as an orderly. He had been out all night walking, and Toni happened to see him as she was driving past. She stopped and offered him a ride. When he got in, he attacked Toni and forced her to drive down an isolated dirt road. 2 days later, her car was found a few miles from the hospital. The next month, her body was found, naked, in a field. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed 8 times. Near her body, police found an abandoned school bus, where her murderer likely conducted the attack. Authorities discovered Gibbs's clothing inside the bus. Gibbs had initially survived the assault and, stripped of her clothing, managed to crawl 100 feet before she died. Another man was suspected and tried for Toni's murder, despite DNA evidence not being a match. But after only one juror voted to convict, prosecutors decided not to retry him, and he was released. 2 months after he murdered Toni Gibbs, Wardrip traveled to Fort Worth, Texas, with the intention of looking for a job. He met 25-year-old Deborah Taylor at a bar where she had been with her husband. Her husband got tired and went home without her. Faryion asked her to dance, and so they danced. He asked to drive her home, and she said okay. I guess thinking that she was picking up what he was putting down, he tried to kiss Deborah, and she shut him down. She was married and drunk, but not that drunk. He raped and killed her and left her body at a construction site. For years after, Deborah's husband was the suspected killer. He passed 3 separate polygraphs they administered, which should tell you that even police believe that they're not very accurate. It wasn't until much later when Wardrip eventually confessed that he was vindicated. On September 20th, 1985, Wardrip abducted 21-year-old Ellen Blau in Wichita Falls. The abduction occurred as Blau was walking alone to her vehicle after leaving her evening job as a waitress. He forced her to drive to a secluded area where he eventually killed her by strangulation. Once her body was found, it was in a very advanced state of decomposition, to the point where she could only be identified by comparing dental records. One friend of Ellen's actually lived nearby Wardrip and said that anytime she saw him, she always felt very uncomfortable around him. On May 6, 1986, Wardrip killed 21-year-old Tina Kimbrough, a waitress he had become friends with. He went to her apartment and suffocated her with a pillow because he said she reminded him of his ex-wife. A few days later, Wardrip called police from across the state in Galveston, threatening to commit suicide. Once the police arrived, he confessed to Tina's murder. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison. He was paroled in December 1997, and he moved to Olney, Texas, where he remarried and became an active supporter in the local church, gaining a good reputation. And that last part sounds a lot like the BTK killer. In 1999, a Wichita Falls detective began a cold case investigation into several unsolved murders. The DNA recovered from some of those matched one person as the perpetrator. Having mentioned while on trial for Tina Kimbrough's murder that he knew Ellen Blau, Faryion became a suspect. They needed his DNA to test, though, so they went to the factory he worked in and disguised themselves as a worker. In the break room, Faryion was drinking from a paper cup. He finished his coffee and was about to throw the cup away, and the detective asked for that cup to spit his tobacco into. Wardrip gave it to him. The cup was tested, and bingo. He was arrested, charged, and convicted of the 4 murders. He was sentenced to death plus 3 life terms, but in 2020, this.
Convicted serial killer Faryion Wardrip is once again hoping a panel of judges will reconsider his case. This comes after he's been appealing his death sentence for 2 decades. Last month, the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals flipped the federal district court's decision to grant Wardrip a new punishment trial. He's now filed a petition for the 5th Circuit to reconsider that decision. His only recourse, if a judge or panel of judges decline a review, would be the Supreme Court. Wardrip pleaded guilty to killing Tina Kimbrough in 1986. Then he was convicted in 1999 for the stabbing, murder, and rape of 20-year-old Terry Sims. It was DNA that finally enabled Wichita County investigators to link Wardrip to a 16-month killing spree that left 5 young women dead. In 1999, Wardrip was sentenced to death by lethal injection for the murder of Sims and 3 life terms for killing Tony Gibbs, Ellen Blau, and Deborah Taylor. He is now 61.
But that didn't work. The Court of Appeals rejected the request for a new trial and reinstated the death sentence for Faryion Wardrip. He remains on death row. That's today's 10-Minute Murder, the brief and bingeable true crime podcast. Thanks for listening today, and I need you to know that you are my favorite person in the whole world. Not everyone listens to this podcast, but you do, and I appreciate it. If this is your first time listening, then follow the podcast where you're listening right now and connect with me on social media. And also tell your friends about 10-Minute Murder if you have friends that are also into true crime. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Make sure that it's a friend that you know for a fact is interested in true crime. If it's someone that's locked into like romance novel stuff and you tell them to listen, they're going to be disappointed. This guy sucks. He doesn't even talk about the tingle on her lips when she remembered the last time together. That spring day in the park with the trickling stream and the ant parade past the picnic blanket. See, I'm not doing all that stuff. Just make sure it's someone that's cool with true crime. Okay, enough of me. You have stuff to do and I have a kitchen to clean. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder. Have a good night.